HowExpert presents how I went from homeless to living in one of Arizona's most expensive towns. A Lesson of Perseverance by Libby Clydesdale. When I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. It was a diagnosis that rocked my family in our middle-class, suburban fantasy dream life, where Dad worked, Mom stayed home, and my sister and I went to after-school activities. It wasn't as though the issues weren't there already, but I guess when my parents saw it on paper, it became real. From then on, it was about accommodating the problem child. Meetings were held with my teachers once a week to discuss my future as a student. Activities surrounding my hobbies ceased, and I was pulled from school 3 times a week to go to therapy. By the time I graduated as a senior, I already felt isolated and alone. After I graduated, things at home got even more difficult. Fights would break out between my mom and me for no reason at all, and there were many nights I found myself locked out of the house if I came home too late. This all culminated on my 18th birthday. My 18th birthday was spent packing for college. I'd been accepted and chosen to move early, and I was buzzing at the prospect of being in charge of my own life, schedule, and routine. I had no idea it would be the last time I would live at home. A fight broke out between my mom and me, and by the end of the day, the things I had packed for college were being rolled behind me in my suitcase as I walked down the street with no direction and strict orders not to come back. I was devastated. As someone who now has over 20 years of working with my own mental health and is getting their master's in psychology, I can honestly say that alienating someone who is struggling with mental illness is one of the worst things you can do for them. Without friends to call on and with my extended family so far away, I was left to figure it out on my own. I walked to the local library and searched homeless shelters, not knowing what else people might do in a situation like this one. But the town I grew up in was very committed to the image of the American dream. This meant that there wasn't even public transportation, let alone homeless shelters, and the closest one to me was 30 minutes away. I had to rely on the kindness of my neighbor to get me there. Living in a place that is labeled a homeless shelter does something to a person's psyche. You feel like the discarded bits of society, and because all our lives we've been told that being homeless was the worst place you could be, it felt like the end of the line. I certainly thought it was. So I gave up. I accepted that this was my new reality. I was forgotten, ignored, and my family kept their distance. I wasn't even invited home for Christmas, which I spent eating tuna casserole in my room and listening to Christmas music. But after about a month of wallowing, I began to leave the shelter. I would go on walks or go to the library. There, I was able to reach out to old friends, read books, apply for jobs, and research mental health clinicians in my immediate area. It was still a very lonely existence, but it was something more than laying in a bed that wasn't mine and waiting for someone to save me. I began seeing a therapist who not only helped me work through some of my mental health issues, but also helped walk me through the process of obtaining public aid. Now I was able to shop for myself as well. I could ask one of the shelter staff for a ride to the grocery store and spend time among people, picking out what I would eat instead of just picking things out of the donations. My therapist also helped walk me through the process of applying to the local community college. It felt like a huge fall from what I would have had if I'd attended the college I had been accepted to. But it was something. Suddenly, where there once was hopelessness, I was hopeful. I thought I was at the bottom, but it was starting to just look like a new launching point. I had a few friends I kept in correspondence with via email. I was thinking about pursuing a whole different career path, and my mental health was being addressed in a way that it never had before, with medication and outpatient therapy. On my 20th birthday, I moved into my own apartment on campus. I was able to save up enough money from my job at the video rental store and put a deposit down on a shared student dwelling. Suddenly, I was back in the game. I was spending time with people my age and pursuing dreams. By my 21st birthday, I had made shaky amends with my family. My parents had divorced. My sister moved out to go to nursing school. And I was nearly done with my associate's degree. That was when I decided to travel. It had been enough for a while to integrate back into society and to learn how to be an adult on my own. But now I wanted more. I got a second job at a very popular chain restaurant and worked double shifts to save up the money to go to Europe. I had developed an interest in a band from Scotland, and while they were too small to travel to the US, I was determined to stand in the front row of one of their concerts. By the time my 23rd birthday rolled around, I could now call myself a world traveler, a far cry from spending day after day in my bed at the shelter. Scotland had been beautiful and life-changing. I had a renewed sense of purpose and decided to go back to school. After everything I'd been through, and all the people who had helped me get through those lonely years, I couldn't think of anything more meaningful than giving back to people. As I began applying to schools, I met the love of my life, a boy from Scotland who I met over the internet, and soon we were smitten with each other. As our relationship developed, we soon came face to face with the prospect of having to navigate the process of immigration. It was daunting, lengthy, and expensive. I put school on hold and got a full-time job so that we could afford to pay for him to immigrate. Suddenly, I found myself back at the bottom. I was sharing an apartment with roommates, sometimes only able to afford one meal a day. Because his green card hadn't been processed, my fiancé couldn't work. The burden of earning fell entirely on me, and it made me feel like I was drowning. Sometimes I even wondered if being in love was worth the hardships it was putting us through. But shortly after my 24th birthday, my now husband was approved for his green card, and he could finally get a job. The pressure was lifted, and he was so grateful to me for pulling the weight all that time that he took on all the responsibility and allowed me to go back to school as a full-time student. It's been almost 10 years since then. 10 grueling years of crummy apartments that turned into not-so-crummy apartments. Him moving up the corporate ladder. Me finishing my teaching degree and moving on to my master's in psychology. 10 years leading to us moving to nicer cities and even moving states. Now, much to our joyful dismay, We live in one of the most expensive towns in Arizona. 10 long years of taking things day by day and always remembering where I came from. Never forgetting that scared young adult who thought she was doomed to be thrown to the wind like yesterday's trash. I can't know what the future is going to bring for me, but I do know that the worst moments of my life showed me that I could survive anything. And when you possess that kind of knowledge, the world is at your fingertips. HowExpert publishes how-to guides and real-life stories by everyday people. Visit HowExpert.com to learn more.